authoritarian politicians, dictators, fascist leaders are by definition fragile, they're insecure, and above all, they're psychopathic. They have to be. You know, you have to be a little bit crazy just to try to run for the leadership of a democratic country. But you have to be truly psychopathic to try to reach that status of a fascist leader. They're always looking over their shoulders to see who's after them, among other things, fascists, because they know that in their rise to power, they've had to do things, in some cases including murder, to get to their position of power. Once they get to a fascist pinnacle of power, and you can look at any fascist leader around the country, then murder becomes an absolute necessity. It's no longer an option. It becomes a necessary response by a fascist leader to what his, and it's always a man, what his twisted, fucked up mind is telling him. Now, in order to build themselves up and to scare away any potential challengers, they humiliate people in public. And in that process of humiliation, they completely denigrate the person that they're attacking to put them where the fascist leader wants them to be, even up to and including senators. I'm referring to the United States. And this is what Trump is doing. In addition, fascist leaders always use this same vicious treatment to their most loyal lieutenants, so that no one ever feels safe. And that means everyone around the dictator, his inner circle, his outer circle, they continue to heap praise on the dictating son of a bitch. And as the MSNBC article says, quote, throughout history, such leaders have never lacked a steady supply of opportunists and profiteers who are all too willing to play this game, even to the detriment of their own dignity. Well, end quote. Of course, you know what has happened to the Republican Party, which is now a rotting corpse. It is now the Christian Fascist Party. That is the latest example of what happens when a dictator like Trump begins to rise in power. Trump uses ritual humiliation, and he always has, but especially to take over the Republican Party and destroy it from the inside. And he's done a damn good job. Trump is a textbook example of how some mildly psychopathic son of a bitch can launch his trajectory of becoming the dictator of a country. Trump is the template. And I would assume that there are younger dictator wannabes in various countries around the world who are closely watching what is happening in this country, because the entire world understands that what is happening in the United States is a rise of fascism that, if it succeeds, if Trump gets the presidency again, this rise of fascism in the United States is going to have profound negative effects on the rest of the world, especially our allies. So, as MSNBC points out, in classic autocratic tradition, the more submissive Republican elites are with Trump, you know, supporting the bastard through his impeachments and indictments and a coup attempt that, in fact, sent these people running for their lives when it was in effect. But these more submissive Republican elites, I'm talking about Lindsey Graham cracker and David Scott, the more he openly scorns them. And he takes every opportunity to embarrass them even further. And Senator Tim Scott, this poor son of a bitch, has been performing this self-abasement and self-denigration. And this is a black man. Why in the fuck would he do this standing in front of this white devil named Donald Trump? I cannot get my mind around that. Maybe I have been listening and watching too many powerful black males who have said individually and collectively, fuck all that. I'm going to do that shit. What, are you kidding me? But here's Tim Scott, a senator, a member of the most exclusive club on earth, just making an absolute step and fetch it fool when he gets around Donald Trump. And of course, Trump loves it. If you remember, after New Hampshire, when Tim Scott showed up at Trump's victory rally, he probably did that, like a lot of these sycophants do, because he thought he would score some points with the white master. And this is so embedded in racism and so embedded in a otherwise honorable, I would assume, and certainly powerful, he's a senator, black man. All of a sudden, he goes into this shoe shuffle, yassa bullshit around Donald Trump. What the fuck? And instead of getting what he thought he would get, David Scott, Donald Trump just pissed all over him in front of everybody. Trump was smirking. You probably saw this. Trump had that shit-eating grin on his face that he usually puts on when he's about to humiliate somebody. But he turned to Scott, and, you know, with the mic on and people there, he said, "Hey, did you ever think Haley actually supported you, Tim?" That was a reference to Nikki Haley's pledge to support Trump if he were to become the Republican nominee. And then this arrogant bastard added this, quote, "And you're the senator of her state? You must really hate her." End quote, Donald Trump. And how did this black man respond to this white devil? Senator Tim Scott shucked and jived around the stage a minute and then said, "Well, I just love you." He said that. Senator Tim Scott, black man from South Carolina, shucks and jives in front of this white plantation owner named Donald Trump, said, "Well, I just love you, boss." He didn't say boss. He might as well have. That was embarrassing to me to see that. I don't know how black folk felt about that little event, that little moment. But all of a sudden, I felt my face flush. I'm sitting in the apartment alone watching this shit on television after New Hampshire primary. And when I see Tim Scott come out there with that big old goddamn grin with all those white teeth and shit, right? Sucking up to Trump. "I just love you, boss." Oh my God. And then after he said that, Trump turned back to the audience and jerked his thumb toward Senator Scott, and Trump said, "That's why he's a great politician." Oh my God. Well, since that hideously embarrassing moment, why was it embarrassing to me? I'm a white man. That shouldn't have been embarrassing. It was fucking horrible. It was so humiliating. It was embarrassing to me because I understand fully the motivation behind Scott doing that. And what apparently, and I hesitate to say this, but what must be embedded in Senator David Scott's psyche deep down, well, here is a powerful white man who loses every fucking time he runs for this or runs for that or endorses this person, endorses that person, but he's a powerful white man, so I'm going to have to obey him, worship him. "I just love you," he told Trump. I just love you. Now, since that horrifying moment, Senator David Scott has been doing this kind of shit without any prompting from the white overlord. And I'm sure Trump just loves it. Scott said yesterday, after voting in the South Carolina primary, he said, quote, I'm far better encouraging and being excited and motivated by President Trump than I was for myself. End quote. I mean, what the fuck is that if it's not a statement that comes out of a true belief in David Scott's head that he is inferior to Donald Trump? I mean, he just said it. Quote, I'm far better encouraging and being excited and motivated for President Trump than I was for myself. Why didn't he just add, and I'm ready to sacrifice my life for the white master? Might as well have. And at a post-primary rally the other night, he assured the people who were listening that he would keep his speech short because, quote, the longer I speak, the less you hear of him, end quote. God damn. David Scott, you have fallen into a shuck and jive Negro, haven't you? Haven't you? And I can say that. Yeah, I'm white. I can say that because I've had enough of my black friends give me the perfect definition of that kind of bullshit so that now I see it when it happens. I see it immediately. And my immediate thought is when I see that kind of shit, a black man doing that little soft shoe bullshit in front of a white master, my first thought is, what in the fuck are you doing, Mr. Black Man? What are you doing? Why aren't you standing up and in a figurative manner slapping the shit out of this man who keeps humiliating you? The longer I speak, the less you hear of him. Jesus Christ. Now, Tim Scott, you would think, especially after what I've just shared with you here, that Tim Scott would get the Academy Award for bowing and scraping to this white man. But Lindsey Graham, the white senator from South Carolina, is giving David Scott some real competition for the Academy Award for sucking in front of Donald Trump. Lindsey is always paying for the sin of criticizing Trump back in 2016. Remember some of the shit that Lindsey said? Quote, if we nominate Trump, we'll get destroyed and we will deserve it. Da-da. And he also called Trump, quote, a race-baiting, xenophobic, religious bigot, end quote. Remember all that? Trump does. Trump remembers every goddamn syllable and every chance he gets. He gets this white man down on his knees. It's my understanding that scholars use the term hollowed out when they're describing institutions that lose their independence in autocracies, which is what Trump wants to establish. When they've been purged, when those institutions have been purged of anyone who is not absolutely loyal to the point of self-abasement to the leader. And Tim Scott and Lindsey Graham have shown that not only are they able to do that, they set aside their manhood. They're willing to do it, to worship at the feet of this gross son of a bitch, Donald Trump. But here's the catch, as has been pointed out by people who understand this far better than I. Individuals who collaborate with these fascists end up hollowed out too. Not just the institutions become just a caricature of what they might have been, what Trump tried to do to the EPA when he was president. The institution stays, but it no longer exists. It no longer has any power. The same thing happens to people. Because they wind up with no morals, no self-esteem, and that's what has happened to white man Lindsey Graham. Astonishing. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.